So today, I want to tell you about something very small, a very ordinary type of moment that happened in 2023 that somehow ended up changing how I think about work and honestly, how I think about myself in it. This was during what me and my best friend call the Great Meltdown of 2023. If you've read one of my previous Substack posts, you'll know that this sounds very, very funny. However, at the time, it really wasn't. 0 stars, do not recommend, will not visit again. What happened was when I was working within a very large shipping company, I was still trying to be sensible, still trying to fit in, still trying to be the whole, oh, be a good employee type of thing. And emotionally, I was already running on fumes. This was a very, very challenging job. It tested my sanity, it tested everything. But then something happened that made me feel like it wasn't me. I was in a meeting with my line manager and I asked for her advice as she used to do my job, so she knew how to handle the workload because realistically, what I was doing was a two-man job. We were in a normal work type conversation, nothing dramatic, and I asked her, how can I do the job well whilst giving good customer service? As when I worked for my dad, he drilled into me the number one thing that what made the business stand out compared to all other competitors was high level customer service. And then, to my surprise, my line manager said something like, this is not exactly what she said, but it was something like, we don't really have time for good customer service. We just need to get the job done. Wow. Okay. That hit something. I kind of remember thinking, okay, that's honest. I appreciate the honesty, not in like a big explosive way, more in a quiet eyebrowsing kind of way. It kind of let me off the hook from being perfect or feeling like I had to be perfect. Fast forward a couple of weeks. We were in a meeting, myself, my line manager, her manager, and with the business's top clients. They were big clients, very important clients. You get what I'm saying. The kind of meeting where everyone sits up and sits a little straighter and pretend that this is how they always sit, trying to put on a good show. And my manager starts talking about how important customer service is, how it's the core value, how it's what sets us apart, and it's a non-negotiable within the business. And honestly, it took everything within me to keep a straight face. I remember thinking, oh, wait, did I just hear what? What's going on? I couldn't believe it. It took everything within me to not lose my stuff. Like, is this the part we forget what we just said 2 weeks ago? Did I dream what happened 2 weeks ago? Or is this the version is this how we perform in front of a different audience? I wasn't angry. I wasn't even surprised. I was just done. I felt a wave of disgust. I'm British in a very British internal way. No flipping of the tables. In all honesty, I wish I had it in me, but I just sat there, quiet and sinking and thinking, oh, I don't belong here anymore. This is not my place. These are not my people. And became suddenly aware of my own face. When you're trying to keep it neutral, but your face is basically doing subtitles for your thoughts. And I remember thinking, please, God, don't let this show, don't let my face betray me right now. And I don't think it did, or at least I hope it didn't. But something did shift within me because it wasn't really about customer service. This was just an example. It was about the performance, the way the story changes depending on who's in the room, the way values become flexible, the way you're expecting to nod along and play your part. And I realized really clearly that I don't have the stomach for this anymore. When I anymore, I'd only been there 9 months and I didn't have it in me to continue anymore. I'm no good at pretending. I'm not good at saying one thing in private and doing another thing in public. And I'm definitely not good at acting like I don't notice when these scripts change. And for a long time, I thought that made me difficult. Now I think it just makes me me. Makes me badly suited in them type of situations. And honestly, I'm okay with that. That moment didn't make me quit my job. There was no sudden dramatic walkout, no slow motion to the door, slamming it. It was just me quietly adding another tally mark to the mental list that I created within called reasons I might not be employable. But it was that day that I realised I wasn't suited to be an employee in the traditional sense because I didn't want to spend my energy translating myself into whatever version is needed for the room that I'm in. I know we all have to do that when we're at work, however, there's a scale. I don't want to keep pretending that this stuff doesn't bother me, and I really didn't want to feel stuck into being trapped by a job because of money. So I asked myself, how much of work is actually about work and how much of it is just keeping the story tidy? And then a more uncomfortable question came up. How much of myself have I been editing just to stay comfortable? Oh, that does hit. That did hit. Because I know we all have to edit a version of ourselves when we're at work. We can't be the full us behind closed doors. But how much of our soul are we selling to the devil? You see, I don't see my manager as a villain in this story. I really don't. I think it's just how a lot of people work in these systems. You say what needs to be said internally to get things done. You say what needs to be said externally to keep things looking good. And everyone sort of agrees not to look too closely at the gap between the two. But I do look at the gap. I always have, and I can't help it. And I think why, slowly over time, being an employee has started to feel like wearing a costume rather than that doesn't fit. Like it feels too tight in places, too fake in others, and it's definitely not in my colour. So I'm curious as what you would do in that situation. I'd genuinely love to know, what would you have done in that meeting? Would you have nodded and played along? Would you have mentally checked out? Or would you have said something? Or would you have done what most of us would do and just play the part? There's no right or wrong answer, there's just your answer. And for me, that day was a line in the sand. Nothing dramatic, nothing brave, just honest. It was a day I really don't want to keep being a person who's good at pretending. And the hopeful bit, the bit I couldn't see at the time, is once you stop pretending, you can start building something for yourself that actually fits, even if you don't know what it is yet. So that's well, reason one is why I am unemployable. I can't play along with the bullshit that you have to do when you're at work. That being said, as you know, I am still an employee. However, I just keep myself quiet, don't participate in any games, and just build something out of work. Build something here with you amazing people. So that's it. That's all for this week's first episode of the day I realised I was done being an employee. I'd love to hear your thoughts, share your comments, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.